So today's craft is a kaleidoscope. There's a printout of the PDF that's available on the website that you can download, as well as there will be a list of materials. I'm just going to go quickly through the list of materials that you do need for this. So the first thing is to print this off on a piece of cardstock. If you don't have cardstock, then you're going to just print it off on a regular piece of paper, glue it onto some cereal box. So just for something that is thin but it has some rigidity to it. You will also need paper towel, the roll, the cardboard that's in the inside, a small straw that is from a juice box, a barbecue skewer, or in place you could use two straws, one that's slightly bigger than the other, that they can fit into one another and slide easily. You will also need some clear plastic from your recycle box, just a tiny bit. You just need to make one circle. You will need some tin foil, and you could use a piece of construction paper at the end for decorating. That's optional. Also optional is some sequins. I'm also going to show how to use some markers to do some of the materials that are going to reflect at the end. Then the last bit of material that is needed is I've got some sticky tack here, but it could also be Play-Doh or plasticine. Then there's glue stick, or I have this other kind of glue, all-purpose adhesive. Tape, it can be this kind of tape, masking tape, scotch tape, whatever kind of tape you have. Pair of scissors. Marker could make your life easier in terms of marking the plastic, although colored mark, like I said, if you've got regular colored markers around, that's fine too. And a pencil. I'm using an X-Acto knife, but that's just because I have it and it's just going to make things quicker, but you really don't need it. Like, this is perfect cutting, like everything's been made to cut really simply using a pair of scissors. And that is all the materials we need. The first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and cut all of these different elements out. So you just simply cut along your different shapes, following the lines. So I've cut these two shapes, but I wanted to just show there's a little trick to cutting this shape that makes life easier. You can just go ahead, and if you cut straight at angles right across like this, across the top of each one of these tabs, it makes the cutting easier. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is just going to fit on top. But this means that then you can come, and now I can cut in here across like this around the circle. And then I'm going to cut there, and then that takes that piece away, and now I've got the one thing exposed. So I'll just do that again. I cut down along the tab, around the circle, and then I come back and I cut this way and that way. And it doesn't matter if these bend, because we're going to bend those later. So now that I have my my circle with those little tabs cut out, I need to create a hole here, and simply I'm just going to take some of that plasticine or sticky tack in this case, and I'm going to just use a sharp pencil and just poke my hole. I need to make it kind of bigger, so then just to complete the hole a little bit more, if I could get that pencil through as big as I can, and then I can clean it up afterwards with my scissors. This doesn't have to be perfectly a circle. This is just a matter of we need a hole here to see through, and it's just nicer if there's not bits sticking out of it. And I know this looks a little bit messy, but you know, if you're using smaller scissors that have rounded corners on it, that's the kind of thing that they'll do. If it's too frustrating to cut this hole, you could, if you've got a bigger hole punch that'll reach to the center, you could use a hole punch. Or you could use a sharp knife on a cutting board. Obviously, that would be an adult doing that job if this becomes too much of a challenge for a child. But like I said, it doesn't need to be any better than that. That's fine. And then you'll need also a hole in this disc, but this hole is smaller unless you're using a straw. If you're using a straw, then you'll have to do the same kind of, depending on the thickness of your straw, you might need to use this pencil. And just it should match the whatever diameter your straw is. But like I said, I'm using the barbecue skewer, so I'm just going to make sure that my hole is as big as this needs to be. And I don't need to do anything more than that. That's it. So then we are cutting the paper towel roll. The length the paper towel roll needs to be is exactly in half, but it's as simple as if I line up the edge of my Kaleidoscope template and the edge of my paper towel roll, I can just take my pencil and just roll this and just making sure it just matches on that edge. And just one last little bit. And there you go. Now I have a line. That's the halfway point for this. Now just using, you can either use a pair of scissors. It is going to pinch it, but you'll be able to like make it go back. You just start your hole and then just go across and cut it in half. We'll clean that up afterwards. So I'm going to take the circle template and I'm going to put it on a place where the plastic is flat, and just take and just trace around in between the different tabs, and it's going to make a dotted line, but that's okay for what we need. So again, we're not going for perfection. We need a shape out of the plastic. So then I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out. I already did one beforehand, so I have a piece cut out. So you can see I have a circle cut out of the plastic, and I'm going to show you how to use that afterwards. Then the next thing is to fold the inside of the Kaleidoscope. So you're just going to, along these lines, you're going to fold this. So we're going to fold it up towards the side that's opposite where the marks are. Then afterwards, what you want to do is actually flatten it out a little bit again. And I know that it might not make too much sense, but it's easier if you pre-fold it before you glue the aluminum onto it. So then the next thing I need to do is I'm going to glue the aluminum. So I need to put glue over this whole thing, except for not this last tiny little flap. So just take and spread glue over a lot of the surface. You don't want it too thick and lumpy, so you can just use your finger and spread it out, because you just need a thin layer of glue to do this with. I do want as much as possible to have glue everywhere, so if I feel like I don't have, this edge is a little bit too dry, I'm just going to add a little bit of extra glue here. And now I've got my piece of tin foil, and I can just take the straight edge that's already with the tin foil and just carefully place it so that it doesn't cover that area. You can overlap it, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to smooth that out. And very important, you see this is the shiny side. That's super important. And then I can go ahead, trim the extra tinfoil away. If you just turn it this way, you can see where the tinfoil is. You don't want to cut into your cardboard, you just want to get rid of that extra tinfoil. And then I'm going to carefully refold it. And now I need to put a little bit of glue along this edge. And I match this edge up with this. And it can be kind of hard to get all the way in, so you can use your pencil as a kind of support so that you can push down the sides. And then we're just going to let that sit aside and dry a little bit because the glue is a little bit wetter. And we'll work on the other parts. So you can see there's aluminum foil inside of that. And it's all nice and shiny. So I'm just going to mark this, before I start attaching things to this tube, I'm just going to mark this piece of construction paper so that I know where to cut it. And again, just like you did before, if you just hold this and you roll it along the edge, you can create a trace. I'm just rolling it straight. I mean, alternatively, you could also measure this and then for your measurement there. But for younger children who are pre-measurement or they haven't gotten used to using a ruler, you can just simply do that as well. And then I can cut that off at that line. But I'm just going to put that aside for now because I don't need it. Then the next thing I'm going to do is that circle that I had with the little tabs. I need to bend all these little tabs over, pre-bend them. And I know that seems a bit funny to pre-bend them before you glue it, but it means that your hands don't quite get all sticky with glue and you're not taking the glue off. So they've already had a little, they'll bend more easily. Now, you can use glue stick just to glue this, just by putting a little bit of glue on each one of these tabs, just for speed though, because it does take a bit of time. I'm just going to use some Scotch tape to put this in place. And who doesn't like to use Scotch tape? I know when my daughter was little, we had to hide the Scotch tape. And now you can see you have the one end of your kaleidoscope and it has a hole so you can see through it, see things through it. And now we're going to start assembling the rest of it. So we need to have this straw up inside to use as a support. Whatever you do with the straw that acts as the support for your barbecue skewer, it needs to be shorter than your cardboard tube by about 2 centimeters or 1.5 centimeters, somewhere in between there. And so you just need to simply cut it. And then we're going to cut our barbecue skewers. So the barbecue skewer to be just a little bit longer than your paper towel tube. And so you can just simply take and draw a line where the tube ends, and then use your thumb and draw a line on the other side of your thumb. If you've got smaller thumbs, you could use 2 fingers. It's not an exact science where that has to be. It just has to be a bit longer, maybe by about 1.5 centimeters or 1.25 centimeters. Nothing more than that. Now you can use, this is something where you can use a pair of scissors. If your scissors aren't very strong, you may have to go and use a knife for this, have an adult do this. But you don't actually have to cut all the way through it. I'm just kind of scoring it. I don't know if you can see that there's a big notch in there. Just going to do that one more time. There. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth, and it's going to break. And I don't have to worry about these splintery bits because they're going to be hidden inside. And so now you can see this is longer than my straws. So the next thing I need to do is I'm just going to take a strip of tape and put it at the end here. Now in this case, I'm going to cut my tape in half because it's a little bit thick. You could also just use a strip of construction paper with some glue to do the same thing. You just want to create some thickness at this end so that it doesn't slip through. Alright, so we have that, and you can see now if I do this, it won't slide through. If you're using two straws, you have to do the same thing. So then the next thing I need to do is I need to be able to get this inside of there and tape it and glue it. So this does need tape again. I'm just going to take and I'm going to do 3 pieces of tape. I'm going to put one at the end, and I'm going to just really stick it down on this straw, but I don't want to stick it to my table because I'm actually going to stick it inside my tube. If it's stuck on here beforehand, it'll make my life easier when I go to do this. So then, now I need to curl these up a little bit. And then I'm going to put it inside this tube like that. Can you see that? And as long as I want to have it as straight as possible. And then all I want to do is be able to push that tape down. Now it gets hard because the tape down there is hard to reach, but I can use my pencil and just reach in with my pencil and just push that tape down so it's secure. So now you can see I've got this sitting here like this. And now hopefully my prism that has the aluminum foil in is all nice and it's much drier, and I can put that in just like that, so you can see how the two things sit beside one another. Now I need to keep this from falling away, so that's where my plastic circle comes in handy. So, but the only thing is of course that barbecue skewer kind of interferes with it. So I need to just simply cut a little notch in it. And it doesn't have to be more fancy than that. Just a little triangle cut out of it. And then in order to hold it in place, this is, again, I'm going to use some Scotch tape, or you could use masking tape. And I want to tape it where I'm just going to follow the line. You see how the triangle kind of makes a line? So I'm just going to use that triangle line, and I'm going to just tape it down like this. This one I have a bit of a notch, so I'm just going to go on this side here, and that's enough. You know, it's just a matter of, so I can do this and this doesn't fall out. That's all that's doing there. And we're getting near the end of it. We're almost done this. So I want to be able to do some marks on this. So I'm going to make a line that divides it in half. And then I want to make a line that divides it in half again. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If this was cake or pie and I want to share it with 3 other friends, you know, how I could do those pieces as evenly as possible. And then in each section, what we want to do is we want to take and we're going to make decoration in that. And now I've already taken one and I've put some sequins on part of it. That's one of my designs. And then I'm going to draw different kinds of shapes. Like this one I'm going to do squiggly lines like this. And maybe I'll use blue and make these kind of little marks on here. This one I'm going to do some marks that are like this, and maybe with some big green sets, and you know, whatever kind of shapes that you have or colors that you have. I have these 3 colors. But you can see that we have 3 different designs in here, and then we're going to be able to look at that and see how they reflect in the kaleidoscope. So then the last thing we're going to do here is we're just going to put this simply, attach it, just push it down without it touching, and we're going to use some of our sticky tack. Like I said, you could use Play-Doh, and we're going to stick it on here so that it keeps it in shape. And now we can look through our kaleidoscope and we can look at the different reflections. Now you can just look through your kaleidoscope and you can just look at how the different shapes, how they reflect in there, and the kinds of designs that they're making just by spinning it around and looking at those shapes and what happens to them as you move that around. And think about the different angles of reflection and what exactly reflection is. So your kaleidoscope works really well, but it's not necessarily the prettiest. So you could either, do just some designs on that if you wanted to, or you can use a piece of construction paper. We did the marks on that earlier to draw it the right size. Or you could even just use a regular piece of paper, and you might even draw some of the designs that you can see inside of your kaleidoscope and use it to decorate the outside. But for just for speed's sake, I'm just going to take some glue and I'm going to do one stripe on one edge, and then I'm going to start it here on the outside of my roll, and then I'm going to go around and around and around and around, and then I'm going to stop here to go off the side of the table, and then I can do more glue stick there, and I just want to lift that up and then go there. And then I've covered it up and it's a little bit more decorative. But like I said, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. That's just an extra bonus. And so that's your kaleidoscope. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. So for the parents, I will also be including a link for a STEM, which is science, technology, English and math, but this is has a science stream to it because it has to do with reflection. I'll include a link for some learning material if you want. Like I said, the kids can just do it for fun, but there is a little bit of learning.